Welcome to the Chad G Ortho OT podcast. I'm your host, Chad Guerrero. I'm an orthopedic occupational therapist, strength and conditioning coach, sports trainer, and I hold over 40 specialty certifications in manual therapy, orthopedics, and sports medicine. On this podcast, we will discuss everything orthopedic therapy, sports medicine, and more. If you're a therapist, health and fitness professional, or someone just wanting to learn more about the orthopedic and sports medicine world, then this is a podcast for you. Let's get started. Before we get started, I want to let you know that if you have an interesting case or topic that you want me to discuss, head over to my website, Chad G Ortho OT, go down to the Contact Me section, fill out that form, and let me know what you have going on or what topic that you want me to talk about on an upcoming episode. Thanks so much. Welcome to another episode of the Chad G Ortho OT podcast. I'm your host, Chad Guerrero, and today I want to touch on youth sports, with the training that goes on in youth sports. So I've seen some really crazy stuff. I've coached sports for years. I coached my son. I had a travel baseball team. And so, I've been around a lot of other coaches, a lot of really great coaches. I'm not saying that I was great. Actually, I probably didn't know what I was doing half the time, but I loved it and I loved working with the kids. But the thing that I found most interesting, and I guess I don't say interesting, maybe most ridiculous over the years, is the crazy things that some of these coaches have their players do, especially at a very young age. It's amazing to me. With all the crazy techniques that they're using, and they looked online. Not against looking online because I have information online, right? But they look online and they see some technique from somebody, and maybe this is not even a credible person, and they're like, I'm going to incorporate that into my practices or whatever that is, and you end up, these kids get hurt, especially when now single sport specialization is such a huge thing, which I'm against that as well. I think you should play in multiple sports. I think it reduces your risk of injury. Well, as a matter of fact, it statistically does reduce your risk of injury. And so I think that, being a multi-sport athlete, you train in different ways, different parameters, and all. So I think that's my whole thing on that. I think you really should be a multi-sport athlete. But anyway, I've seen, and just to name a few things that I've seen that I have no idea where this stuff comes from. Softball pitchers. So I have seen coaches take, the 5-gallon bucket. Now, I'm not a softball coach, never coached softball, worked on a lot of softball athletes over the years. And they take this bucket and they make like this windmilling motion, with the throwing arm, because that's going to do, I don't know what that's supposed to do, but it's going to do something. And, my, kind of standpoint on that is, or viewpoint is like, it looks like to me, you're really straining, number one, the labrum. Rotator cuff has got to do some kind of crazy stuff. And then also like a bicep tendon, among other things. I just don't know how great that would be. And I have had athletes come in and complain like, well, my coach had me doing this bucket windmilling thing. And, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Right. So that's one of the things that I've seen. The other one that I've seen is, coaches having kids in the weight room with a bar on their back, right? Especially, high up on the neck. And instead of a traditional squat, they squat and they jump, like this jump squat kind of thing with this bar on their back. Now, I'm sure there's going to be people out there that listen to this that do it all the time and say, okay, it's fine. I like that, whatever. I find it very hard to believe that there would not be a high risk with that, with everything from fracture to disc pathology to, I just don't think that that's good. And I don't think really, in my opinion, that I don't think that like the risk is worth the reward. Are you really improving? Did this high school kid go to a Division I athlete because they were jumping with a bar on their back, or did a collegiate athlete get into pro sports because of that? And probably not. Because you got to think about athletic health, because it's not just, is this 9-year-old going to be, are they going to make it to the pros? Statistically, probably not, just being honest. But the thing that I look at it is, sure, you want to enjoy and have a good athletic career, even if it's just a youth athletic career, but you don't want to be 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, whatever, and you've got all this pain and you've had 2 or 3 surgeries because you had some coach or trainer or whoever it was that had you doing these just really ridiculous things. I think that there are a lot of sports programs like in schools that do not have a certified strength and conditioning coach, or strength conditioning trainer or sports trainer. um, they may have a therapist, they may have an athletic trainer, they may have, some coaches that like to work out, they may have, some of these different things. And that's a lot different than having somebody who's put the time in, who's studied for, accredited, exams and things like that. I'm not saying that people that have not went through those programs, they don't know what they're talking about, nothing like that. But I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that, like, that does, to me, if I'm looking around, that does signify like you may obviously have a little more knowledge in that area. At least it's documented knowledge. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that they know how to prescribe medicine, probably could operate on somebody from watching TV shows and YouTube. But yeah, I probably would find somebody with MD or DO behind their name before I let them operate on me. Just saying. So, um, so those are some of the things. I'm trying to think of another one that's been very common. It's the weighted balls. Oh man, that throwing weighted balls, whether it's baseball, softball, whatever, big debate. A lot of programs use it with no real scaling or assessment or knowledge of biomechanics or anything else, just like going at it all willy nilly. And there's a research study that was put out. Mike Reinold put this out. I think him, Glenn Fleissing, um, and there was one more. I can't remember who else was on this big study that was published. And they were looking at uh, weighted ball throwing programs of baseball, and it was a very minute increase in velocity. I mean, very very minimal. And but what they did find was the injury rates and the risk of injury goes up. So you have to ask yourself: is a 3% increase in velocity worth damaging an elbow, a shoulder, whatever, and putting you behind and these kind of things? So um, with the weighted ball programs, I'm not saying the weighted balls are bad. I mean, people use them all the time. I understand that. I just think that you need to have some sort of uh, uh, kind of program that you're going by based off of the kid, the age, or if you're, whatever, before you just go out and just start doing some of those things. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. Another thing that I've seen is in like what's called unilateral rotational sports. So like golf, baseball, softball, where you're primarily, one side dominant, and as comparison of like football or basketball, where you're switching hands and directions a lot, things like that, or tennis, where you may switch over and hit with the other hand or whatever. Um, those unilateral sports, especially that require a lot of rotation. I don't know how many times I've seen, folks, they do rotational training as the main focus, right? Because this person needs to increase their ability to hit. So we've got to put some bands on them and, work on, their rotation and resistance. And I'm not saying that's bad. You can do that, of course. And that is the movement pattern that they're used to. But the I think a lot of consensus on this among a lot of rehab professionals and sports professionals, trainers and so forth would be they're doing so much of this now that's unilateral, that's on one side. Like repetitive strain is very high, so you have a risk of tendonitis, tendinopathies, things like that. Muscle strains and all that you're going to have. Ligament sprains, and so irritating growth plates in the joint space and all these kind of things. So let's break that up and go into a different movement that doesn't require the same rotation that you've been doing on, just day in and day out. You're practicing 2, 3, 4 hours a day or whatever that is, so many days a week, and then you play on the weekend, and then you play during the week. And so going in and adding in more movements like that, I don't think is a good idea. And so, like for me, with our athletes, the thing that I would do or have done is we do maybe go back to more compound movements. Maybe we do squats and deadlifts or whatever that is. That's not so unilateral or one sided. I'm not saying we can't do some of that, and sure, I have done it, and will continue to do it, but that's not my focus at all. And we all know in a rotational sport of the upper extremities, the power is generated in the legs, right? So if you're going somewhere, for therapy or training or whatever, and the therapist says, we're going to increase your arm strength, and that alone is going to increase your velocity or your distance in throwing. Research doesn't support that. It's going to be developing leg power and development of strength there, and then your ability to transfer that through the core and the trunk, and then on out and dissipating through the upper extremity. So it really starts with the legs. And I don't know how many times that you've seen coaches like tell people, you're going to go improve your strength or your velocity and all that by taking, go home and get a dumbbell and start curling it. I don't know how many times I've heard that. And it's amazing because for an overhead athlete, especially when you throw, the tricep is activated, right, to straighten out the elbow. Now the bicep comes in to stabilize and decelerate, help with the elbow extension to decelerate that, but it's coming from the tricep. So if anything, you tell somebody to go exercise their tricep, but I mean, that won't get it. I'm not saying do that because that's not right either. I think it needs to be a collection of things and looking at things in a whole. And so the whole gist of this whole thing is, for if parents are listening to this, especially, you want to make sure that, your coach or coaches, whatever age that is. I mean, I have no problem if, I have one, my son's in high school. My daughter plays on a travel team. She's about to be 8. And so I have no problem in, I'm not saying, hey, I'm criticizing you, you're wrong, but if there's something that I feel like is definitely a huge red flag in the injury department, then I would definitely address that with that coach and just say, hey, look, you can do what you want, but I don't think this is a good idea necessarily, especially, for longevity, I just don't think it's a good idea. And I'm basing that, again, I've been doing this a long time, and, I stay involved with a lot of different organizations and things. The American Baseball Biomechanics Society, which was developed by Dr. Glenn Fleissing, puts out incredible research. It's really a group of super, super smart people that are involved in this. And somehow they let me in. I don't know how I got in, but I slipped in through the cracks, I guess. But that has been really great because Dr. Glenn Fleissing is a consultant to the MLB, does tons of research. At the Andrews Sports Medicine Institute and all this, so just very, very knowledgeable person. So I also recommend following Dr. Glenn Fleissing on social media. I know he's on Instagram. I'm not sure what all else, but I follow a lot of his works and publications and things that he puts out. It's really incredible. So anyway, so at the end of the day, make sure that you do a little homework, and if you see some kind of oddball training techniques, the newest thing that's come out, just be aware that there might, even though it may have some benefit, it may not be worth the risk of injuring yourself, and then either shortening your athletic career, or when you're 40, 50 years old, whatever, you're calling me to make an appointment, to come check some things out. So I hope that helps, guys. I appreciate everyone again for the support. Thank you so much for listening, and you guys have an awesome day. This podcast is brought to you by Guerrero Rehabilitation, setting the bar for rehabilitative and sports medicine care.